Welcome to the Real People, Real Business show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I am so excited to welcome my friend Maggie Patterson. Maggie's a small business boss that helps you cut through the BS while building a sustainable service-based business. She teaches business owners to do things differently, put people first, and own it. Oh my gosh, Maggie, I have been waiting for you to be on the show for so long. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. And I know we're going to have so much to talk about.
Well, you and I have DM exchanges on the regular. So if that's any indication of what's going to happen today, but thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Okay, so let's get the history out of the way first. Tell me about your business. Tell me about how you got there. Tell me about what you are standing for these days.
So I started my business back in 2005. So quick math, we're at the 16-year point, and I did what many women of my generation, the Gen Xers, did when we had babies. We were like, F this, I'm out of here. And because I couldn't do a commute, I had a husband who worked shift work, all the things. And I started my business. I started freelancing. And here's the thing I always like to say is, number one, I had a husband with a stable job, benefits. He has a cushy government job. I could incur that risk. And I'm very privileged in that I could do that. And then the other thing is, I came out of an agency environment. Essentially, I was already doing new business. I was already writing proposals. I was working with big brands like Microsoft. So I knew exactly what to do to start my own business. So I had a lot of advantages going into this, which I recognize a lot of other people don't. They just don't have that experience. So there's always those nuances there. But from there, I quickly, I wrote a business plan. I hit my revenue goal within 3-4 months. And I was like, okay. And then I coasted for 8 years. I was like, this is good. And, small kid, didn't sleep, all those things. And then finally I discovered the online business world and I was like, what's this? And like many of us, I can make money while I sleep. Sounds good.
With a laptop on the beach in your Lamborghini.
Yeah. I was going to put the car seat in the Lamborghini and be good to go. I was like, I don't know if we're going to fit in this vehicle, but we are this is the dream now. And from there, I quickly fell into the online business world, started working with some people, got rid of my corporate clients, worked behind the scenes in a lot of businesses doing copywriting. And I was like, this makes me want to vomit on the regular. These business practices are horrible. And I think because I had that corporate experience, I was like, oh, no, this is not how marketing is actually done. This is downright shady. So I then quickly, within a few years, pivoted back out, started a content marketing agency. And now I run the content marketing agency Scoop Studios. And I have Small Business Boss, where I do business mentoring as an antidote to all the bullshit and fear and all the things you and I detest about the online business world.
And that's what we spend a lot of time talking about, is not so much the venting, but like, what's the alternative, right? So I want to get into that in a second, but let's just quickly go back to your journey. So you've had this content marketing agency, and who are you serving?
Typically tech and professional services companies. So, law firms, management consulting firms, traditional tech companies that are, either B2C or B2B plays. And we focus on content strategy and content production. So we've gone beyond like, hey, we do content marketing, to this like micro niche. So we're really that extension of their team. And then there is one client for them. We're kind of like fractional marketing director. But I can only handle having one client at that level because there's only so much me to go around.
I wish there was more. So these are like, are they startups? Are they small businesses that you're serving? They're
typically mid-market.
Yeah.
They're typically they're established tech companies, they're in that 25, 50 million range. They're not billion-dollar businesses. They're not necessarily brands people are familiar with, but they are very well established in their markets.
And what are they doing for content marketing that's different than like the solopreneur kind of world that you and I are familiar with?
It's fascinating. So I think, one of the big differences I'm seeing right now is most of these companies do content marketing really in that content production blogging piece with a focus on SEO. And there has been a significant ramp up for a lot of them of just the amount of content they're putting out because of the expectations of the algorithm. And I think that's been interesting to watch. Like one of our clients was like, oh, we're publishing 350 posts this year. And I was like, thank God we're not writing all of those. that's like a whole content. Like, we are our agency is like one of many because they have that much content. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is, the money is in your list and all these kind of traditional things that we're taught to do as solopreneurs in the online marketing space. I don't see as much with my corporate clients. Like they don't rely on doing their sales necessarily through their website, through things. They're still doing, the sales team is very active. And I work with sales teams often because they need resources from us. They need case studies. If they're going to do a cold email campaign, we might work with them on, subject lines, but everything is still very custom. It's not super mass market. And I think it's a fascinating distinction. And I always have this kind of text. I'm like, oh, we wouldn't do this for an actual corporate client. Why would you do that in your business? That seems weird.
I love that parallel though, because you and I have a very actually similar background and we are a similar age and similar like life trajectories. And I worked for Microsoft as well. And I come from the tech space and it's interesting because I have another client who runs a content marketing production agency and she serves the Microsofts and she serves the sort of the big mid market. And it's a really different world, even though it's content marketing. It's a different world, different priorities. And I think what's really fascinating is how you've kind of taken that lens and turned it on the online business world. So where's the parallel and where are the differences?
So I think this super interesting thing, and I've done a lot of analysis around this because for me, I'm like, I can bitch about this, or I can actually start to propose solutions. Like I have 20 plus years in marketing. Like, what do I know here that can make this different? And the thing I really landed on was most of what we do in online business, the marketing and the sales strategy, it's rooted in fear. It's about pushing you and pushing your beliefs and everything else. It always comes back to this heart of fear. And fear is like literally the most powerful motivator out there. But it's also like if anyone's done anything out of fear, you also know it's not necessarily the best motivator. Like it's not coming from a great place. So, what I see in the opposite with corporate clients is everything they're doing is like, how can we be credible? How can we be real authorities? How can we be trustworthy? So everything comes back to, are we going to do this with fear or are we going to do this with trust? Like when I'm working with a sales team and they're trying to close a big deal, I know you know what this looks like stuff. They're not thinking, how can I use some scarcity here to move them along? They're having a real discussion. It's a real relationship and they're building trust on a continuous basis. Like, you want to know why the phrase trust issues exists? It's because trust is like the most fundamental thing we can build with anyone in any relationship. And once you breach that, it's over. So I think a lot of the tactics we've been taught, because they're based in fear, they might work initially and they erode trust, but for the long term, for a relationship with a client or a customer that's going to be with you for ages and buy everything you do and really be engaged in your business, it's not going to work. People are going to get in there and realize, hey, you know what? This is not what I was sold. I don't feel good about this relationship and I don't really like what's happening here.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of a conversation to have there because I know sales and I know selling in the online business world too. And there are certain times where not scarcity or fear, but a little bit of urgency is necessary. Like if you're selling a time-based program and you need to start at a certain time, like there is a deadline and that's just real. But the fear-based deadlines and the scarcity, I just could never get behind them. And I think I came from that corporate world too, where I sold multiple $1 million projects to big corporate clients. And the only way I would get the sale quickly is if they trusted me. And if we started to have a relationship. And the funny thing is, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but I actually wrote a talk on this about how I would go out and I would just do what felt like natural to me as a woman. As a woman in the tech space, I was surrounded by men, and I would go out there and I would just like I would make friends. I would just make friends with these big corporate clients. 'Cause at the end of the day, they're just human beings. Like they're just people.
Exactly.
And then I would get told all the time, "Oh, you're too familiar, or you're like it's really inappropriate for you to be friendly like that, or whatever." But I was always the one that closed the sale. I was the one who grew the accounts. I had this magic, and I was constantly at odds with that because I was constantly being told by all these men that it wasn't right, but they couldn't tell me why, and they couldn't argue with the results. And so it was like this constant conflict until like last year, when it finally came to me, where I was like, oh, I was just doing what came naturally, and I was just making friends, and I was building trust. And it wasn't fake trust, it was just like a real conversation, and nobody was used to that.
So, you know what, Steph, I love this because my very first job, actually my second job, my first job was very temporary, but right out of, PR school was I was working a tech company in a sales support role. And my job was basically like I was the sales team's lackey. And one of my jobs was I had to get my hands on RFPs from state governments. And a lot of times this is like early internet, right? So it's not like it is now, like, oh, I'm going to log into the website. So there was a lot of phone calls. There was a lot of emails. There was a lot of relationship building to like basically woo these departments of transportation. And then the guys were always like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, how can you get this? And I'm like, because I'm nice. Because I'm just building relationships with these people. And they're like, oh yeah, of course I'll give this to Maggie. Like, she's pleasant to deal with.
Yeah.
Versus they were funny. They're like, I need the RFP. It's like,
yeah.
I'll be like, let me get this for you. I know you want to get into this deal. Here you go. I don't know what they did with they left, but
I got this job. I ended up, I don't know, it was like a few years ago. I ended up transitioning all of the software vendor contracts for a very, very large electronics manufacturer when they got acquired. And I would deal with all of these sales reps for these software companies. And I just had this relationship with this electronics manufacturer, and they're like aerospace and defense, like the men that are all ex-military, everything like that.
Yep.
But they loved me, and they would just be like, you have full control to negotiate on our behalf for whatever you decide, whatever you want, we'll just go with it. And I'm like, great. Because I had proven to them that I was on their side and that I knew what I was doing and that sort of thing. And then you'd get up against these software vendors, and they're all like sales guys, slimy sales guys. And they would just be like, oh, what have you been told to do? I'm like, I don't get told to do anything. I'm here to negotiate on their behalf. And so if you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation. But if we're not going to have a conversation, we're going to end the contract. And they were just like, oh, but it was, it's just, as a woman in the tech space, it was a really interesting kind of juxtaposition of being held in this place where you automatically don't have authority, but then also being revered because you were one of the women in the tech space who could actually have a conversation and like maneuver, because there was no in between. There were a bunch of guys like jockeying for a position, and then there was like nobody who could actually make them talk to each other. And so having that sort of business human focus inside a technology industry where everything is very just emotionless was just a really interesting place to grow up.
It totally is. I always think of like those first opportunities where my former mentor and boss would bring me in, and they would be like, oh my gosh, this girl is what they would be thinking. She's 28. How does she know anything about encryption software? And within 10 minutes, I would just be like, I would have them eating in my hand. They're like, whoa. I'm like, because I did my homework.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be caught out. And that's all it took, is a little bit of research, a little bit of human factor, a little bit of trust building. And then after that, like, my mentor would be MIA. They'd be like, oh, we don't talk to anybody but Maggie.
But isn't that sort of just the distillation of what we're talking about with the online business world, is that we're lacking the human factor, right? And in some ways it's like overly human, right?
Yes.
But it's like human has become a sales tactic, but it's not really human. It's like this fabricated, manufactured human that isn't actually real. So now we don't trust the human side of the business. So
yeah,
where are we?
I call this curated vulnerability. Like, I'm going to show
Yes.
up with this really canned story to make you think I'm authentic. And really, it's not true, but it's just here to make me human and relatable. So we start to enter this parasocial relationship, which is one-sided, where you think I'm your friend. That's what that's all about. And it is so messed up. Like,
Okay, but
so messed up.
there are like I end up being friends with all my clients, right?
Yeah.
We have a trust relationship, and but what's the difference between, like, how does somebody out there sort of distinguish between that authenticity and this manufactured vulnerability, or even manufactured humanity?
So I think what's interesting is, this is where, to build real trust with people, I really am a strong advocate for people slowing down. Just slowing the hell down. Like, if your reaction is, I need to buy this because it's gone at 12:59, no, don't do that. Take the time to get to know people. Watch if their actions and their words align. Like, really get a feel for someone. Like, you need to take the time to decide, because ultimately you have a choice in this. And if you are rushing through that choice, your trust has been eroded or gamified. And now you're in a situation where you've fallen prey to curative vulnerability and being played. And if we just slow down a little bit and engage our critical thinking, and we're like, okay, well, that's interesting. Steph said this and Steph said this, and oh, her actions and everything else is aligned. This must be true. And the other thing is too, like, I mean, I'm not going to say, you know, sweeping generalization, but I will make one here. Like, the bigger the brand is, the harder it's going to be to be seen, the harder it's going to be to have those relationships. And I'm sure for you, Steph, and I know this is true for a lot of my clients that I mentor, they come to me because they know I will know their business. They're not going to have one question maybe answered every 6 months on a group call. So I think also knowing what you really want out of, and what your expectations are, because there is a bait and switch that happens. And I think we don't slow down. We don't read the fine print. We don't do our homework. We don't engage our critical thinking. Then we get into the group and they're like, why am I one of 2,000 people in this program?
But there's still this, like, hope, right?
Oh, yes, hope.
There's this hope that maybe that promise will actually come true. And I always like mock this, right? I had this 6 figures in 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever, because that's actually like the antithesis of, I purposely sell my program based on going slow. And I purposely
Yes.
tell all of my clients, you're going to have to slow down. Like, you're here for 6 months. You can have all the content in 12 weeks, but you're here for 6 months because I know it takes that long. And that's fine, except one of the biggest objections to my selling my program is that, oh, 6 months, I don't know if I can commit to that. You better commit to that, because you're not going to get very far in under 6 months. But people still want to believe that the impossible is possible, right? That this like fast, quick, even if they're educated, even if they know this dialogue, at the end of the day, they're still urgent. They're feeling urgency around their issues being solved. And so they still get sold based on that urgency.
And I think what's fascinating in the online business world, like, I went back and looked at my own investments. I did like a survey of different people in the space. And I think the reality is most of us have had a very low success rate with a lot of the things we've invested in. And yet we just keep doing it. And it's the ultimate sunk cost fallacy, where we are just like, you know what, maybe this time will be different, because as humans, we are hopeful. And as business owners, like, as much as we might be a little cynical, we are ultimately optimists. Like, we are the kind of people who quit our jobs to run a business. Of course, we think it's going to work, and we want it to work so much faster. When the reality is no one's really that transparent about how long things really take. No one talks about how long the journey really is. And I think this, for me, is a really big factor in building trust. Like, if someone makes a promise and says, I'll get you to 6 figures in 6 months, that should immediately be suspect, because it is a result that is not typical.
Yes. And you know what? Here's what I can tell you. I filled out your survey, and I've had the experience of investing big money into some of these programs. And what I saw from being inside one of these very expensive programs is that it has really nothing to do with the content. It has to do with your willingness to create relationships that may or may not feel good for you with the people who are driving. And those people who are driving are nurturing the people in their programs to come up and sell their programs. So it's has nothing to do with the content, it has nothing to do with the support. It has to do with your relationships. And so I can't fault anybody for doing that. I can't fault anybody for recognizing there's an opportunity to get exposure by creating a relationship with someone who has it. But let's call a spade a spade. That is the game. That's
Yeah, and a game,
the pay to play game.
and that's exactly what it is. It's a pay to play game, and unless you are willing to pony up 25, 30, $1,000 to get in the room, to be a cool kid, to play the game, to play the affiliate game and everything else, like, you better get used to slow, because unless you're willing to buy your way in, and I would say if we actually did the math, I don't know that you're much further ahead once you spend that kind of money.
Yeah, totally. Talk to me about celebrity entrepreneurs. This is another thing that you have been writing about, and I loved it. I love everything that you do. I mean, you know that.
Thank you, Steph. We're mutual fan club. So celebrity entrepreneurs, like, I needed a term because I was like, they're not influencers, but I didn't want to call them like big names because I'm like, I don't want to elevate these people. And I really feel like where we've arrived in online business as this industry has matured, it's been around for more than 10 years. We are at the point where we have the grandparents of the great grandparents of all these people, like kind of down the line. And so celebrity entrepreneurs are essentially what I would call this group of big name celebrity leaders in this industry. Not that I think they're doing much leading, but that, really kind of fall in these archetypes. So we have like the BFF next door. So that's the person who's playing on the relatability that everyone loves and they think they're so good. And I'm like, it's an image they're selling you. There's the rebel creative. There's the, I'm in the midst of revamping some of the archetypes. There's the woo-woo ones who are like, you're just going to manifest. But all of them are rooted in this kind of, there's a lot of mindset manipulation. There's a lot of use of weaponized sales tactics that are designed to get us to buy faster. There's a lot of storytelling that is extremely questionable, a lot of invented authority. All those things we've kind of seen as the hallmarks of online business. I really go back to those celebrity entrepreneur archetypes. And I think so many times we expect that someone is going to fall into this like dude bro or lady boss package. And I'm like, no, you're being played by all these people. Just because that person is not lying on a Lamborghini, with his backwards hat, like rolling in money, does not mean the practices are the same. And I think right now we have to be so careful because there's a lot of people are rebranding themselves as integrity and ethical. It's the same shit in a different pile. So recognizing the tactics, recognizing those celebrity archetypes, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can see this for what this is.
Okay, so for people like us, and
Yeah.
this is really important to me, I like, even if it made me so much more money to be able to sell that way, I just can't, right? Like it's
Same.
not me, and it would feel gross, and it would probably come across as inauthentic anyway.
Yeah.
But what do we need to do better? Like how do we signal to our people? And maybe there's going to be people who are just not our people, right? Who want to be part of that game, who want to be part of that because being part of it says that you did something. And it's like nobody got fired for hiring IBM, right? Like it's,
yeah,
oh God, I'm really aging myself. I actually worked for IBM. But it's the same thing. Like, well, I took so-and-so celebrity entrepreneurs program, so I must be further ahead. But it's not about that. So how do we signal to the world that we are part of this tribe of these integrity focused entrepreneurs, these people who really want you to succeed by doing the less sexy things?
Yeah. And I think I've just come off like 2 back-to-back program launches. And I'm going to be honest, like, it's a tough sell sometimes. It is a tough sell being like, hey, I can't promise you that you're going to make 6 figures. Like, and I asked with my last launch, I said, hey, you know what? Like, why didn't you buy? Length of program, because 12 months was just too hard for people to wrap their head around. And the fact that I was not promising some bold result. And I'm like, well, I'll see you in a year because we'll be in the same place.
Yep. You and I are the exact same people.
But, for when you think about, okay, so how do I build trust? How do I signal trust? How do I make this very clear to people? It comes down to 5 things, which I call the truth cores. And this is my trust DNA matrix / method / and it's not meant to be prescriptive. This is not a checklist. These are kind of the things for each of us to use as markers. How do we tell the truth in our brands? So the truth about our business journey, the truth about our own results, the truth about all of it, because it is really easy on the internet to show up and be like, hey, I have all these wild credentials. Like, let's just not exaggerate. Let's be experts on the things we're experts on and be like, hey, I don't know anything about that. And I think being very transparent from the get-go, telling the truth, being transparent, so that what people see is what they get. Because one of the biggest complaints I hear, and I'm sure you've heard it from people, is the bait and switch. This is not what I signed up for. This is not the experience I thought I was getting. So, being very clear, like, it is going to take 6 months. It is going to take, I don't know that you're going to make 6 figures. Like, being transparent, time, being realistic about timeframes, the time frame of our own journey, the time frame of our clients' results, the time frame of like how long this work really takes, and then results. This is my biggest pet peeve, and this is why this is in here. For us to build trust, people need to know what results they're going to get, but not necessarily many results, and not necessarily these kind of results, not typical results. It's what's the full range of experiences people are having in your programs? How am I setting a realistic bar? And then the other thing, how do we approach that from a perspective of co-owning results with our clients? Because the typical paradigm with results, and I know we've probably talked about this, is I'm the celebrity entrepreneur. I'm now taking credit for Steph's amazing success in the program because my program is so amazing that like Steph did really well. And it's like, it's not at all acknowledging what that person might have brought to the table, their past experiences. Like, there are so many times I was asked for testimonials and like, your program did nothing for me, but I'm a superstar in my own right. So the results, like, how do we basically approach that with a much more holistic thing? And then the final thing is respect. And I think if you do anything in the bare minimum to build trust, is how do you consistently, with your clients, with your community, with like every single person who interacts with you and your brand, how do you treat them with respect? Because so much of what we see in online business is downright disrespectful. And it is down, especially for not paying clients. There's very much a polarization that goes on to try to move people into action. And I'm like, I'm going to meet you with humility and kindness. And, we're going to establish some mutual boundaries here, whether you're someone I interact with on Instagram or you're a paying client.
So, I mean, the reality is that I see myself as like someone who stands beside you and just kind of ushers you along, right? I don't have I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of experience in all different types of business. So if you come to me and you're in my program and you better bet I'm going to be able to tell you what the problem is.
Yeah.
I can promise you more money because I know that the way to get more money or to build your business is to be totally in alignment inside your business. But that's not sexy, right? Like, once people get the right business model and they have the right offers and the right pricing and they understand and they love what they're doing, they tend to take off, which is great.
Absolutely.
But I will never promise, I have never, ever, and never will make more money be my sales tactic. Like, that's just not what and quite frankly, the people who join my program, it's not what they're after anyway. They want to feel better. They want to feel like they're doing work they love to do. They want to have, like, take the pressure off themselves. They want to be not hectic and stressed out and whatever. So all this bullshit about boss babe crap and, the lifestyle that's being sold is just, I mean, it's not even what people want anymore, right?
And I think what's so interesting about that is like the number one story, the number one backup on most things being sold in the online space are, this will help you make more money. Here's how. And selling that lifestyle. And it's suspect to me. It is suspect. Like,
but I couldn't even maintain, like, first of all, nobody wants to see me in a bikini. Secondly, like, I couldn't even maintain the lifestyle that's being sold. I just want to like finish at 3:00 and be able to pick up my kids without like worrying about it, right? Like that is not sexy, but it is really exciting to
And
me.
for the majority of people out there that are chasing this dream that we've been sold, that's actually what they want.
Yes.
But so many times people buy programs, they buy coaches, they buy masterminds because they think that is what they are supposed to want. And they mistake buying the program with buying that person's life.
Yeah. You and I have had a conversation about skills and
Yeah.
qualifications. And I had a really hard time calling myself a coach for a long time. And I still do because I don't love the term. And you and I have come across people who, you're like, that ruined it for me. But let's
Yeah.
talk about coming from the corporate world and having that perspective. I remember coming into this online business world and like, just be clear, I have a degree from in internet marketing from 1998. Okay, so I've been in this space for a while and watching this space for a while and kind of straddling the corporate blah blah blah. But I finally went full on into this space about 5 years ago, and I was just like, what the actual F is going on here? And how are these people looking at what they're buying and going, this is going to help me? Because you've got quote unquote business coaches who have never run a business before. I mean, to me, that's so bloody logical. But let's talk about skills and experience and the role that they have played or not. And is that changing?
Is it changing? I don't know, but my last dying caption on Instagram will probably be dedicated to consumer awareness of this issue because uh, I think especially too, like I have years of corporate experience. You have years of like we've been doing this a long time. So when you see a business coach roll up that's never run a business, it is downright negligent.
I
Like it is
know.
negligent. And I don't know how those people sleep at night, but I figured out that how they sleep at night is this is what's being taught by their business coach and their business coach. Like there is the fake it till you make it whole story. There is the you only have to be a few steps ahead. And I think that does, as an industry and on an individual level, an immense disservice to people because they're getting bad business advice that is wasting their time and their money. It's harsh. And when we think about qualifications and expertise, this is why we need to slow down because anyone can say anything, but like with 10 more minutes of research, you're going to find out pretty quick that person graduated last year. Hit up their LinkedIn. All of a sudden you're going to get the real story.
Yeah, to be fair, I do have some very close friends of mine who are still in their 20s and are
Yes,
incredible at what they do.
absolutely.
So this isn't an age thing, but I
No.
think the problem is that people don't know what they don't know. And so I think these people who are masquerading as business coaches are not even doing it intentionally to be manipulative. They just don't even understand that there's a whole bunch of stuff they're missing and that their poor clients are going to sign up and they're not going to know how to serve them because they've got this like very narrow, they're usually marketing focused. They're
Yes.
like, they have an expertise in email marketing or they have like, and so for them, everything, they have a hammer, everything's a nail. Right. And I think that, without getting into this kind of spiteful negativity or, complaining about what our industry has become, I think the biggest problem is a lack of education. Right. And that these people don't even understand what they don't know. And so,
And they're victims too, right? They've
yeah,
been sold the dream of being a business coach in a box. Like, and I don't fault them for it. It's sold in a very enticing, shiny, glittery package in many things. Like, ooh, my Paris photo shoot is gonna woo you, or my picture on a yacht. Like, I get why people this. And I will say, like, some of the smartest, most talented people I know, they're 20 years younger than me and they are amazing at what they do. And it's because they have actual experience and they've honed their craft and they've invested in their skills. And most of all, they stay in their own lane.
They're critical about themselves too, like not
Yes.
critical in a bad way, but they can think critically about their skills and recognize that there are gaps, right? And they're constantly learning and educating themselves, and they're humble, right? But like there's a program out there from some people that I know who have watched their careers, and they went from like a social media manager locally to now running a $10,000 mastermind program where you're supposed to be tapping into the power of your vagina. And I mean, there's something for everyone. But
There really is.
the story is that basically they just worked with a business coach who did the same thing. And so this is where it's coming from, is this like mimicry, right? If I just follow the same thing that someone else did, I'm going to do, and this is like the total antithesis of everything that I preach, is like the problem you have is that you're trying to replicate someone else's business model, but you are an individual and a human. So this like human focused business, this is the only way you break through, right? This is the only way you break through and start to build something that's going to sustain you, that's going to like feel good for you, is when you run your own business. And that business could be some total freak show of like a business model that has like all these weird things bolted together. But if it's you, it's you. And you're going to have a lot of energy behind that. And you're going to find the way to sell to those people that you really want. Right. But this mimicry, I think, is one of the big problems that we have, is that there's like this take my templates and build your business based on my templates. And it's just shit.
It is shit. And it's leading to so much homogeny. Like it's just so much sameness. It's like, you get on Instagram, you're like, yep, yep. It's like social captions in a box. Here I go. And here's the thing, I think we need to think about this in the context of authority and everything else, is the lack of specificity with things. Because we have these newer business coaches who've been coached by coaches who coach coaches who coach coaches who don't actually have any like actual business skills, there's a lack of understanding of business models. I see personally a lot of creative done for you service providers who've been done a massive disservice because they're working with coaches who don't understand deliverables. They don't understand proposals. So they immediately throw those things out. And we have to be more discerning at a consumer level to say, okay, you know what? Does this coach understand my business model? Like, is it a Steph who has worked with all these business models and can help me navigate maybe switching between them or bringing the best of them? Or is it a Maggie who works with a ton of done for you creative business owners? Like understanding what you're truly getting versus just generalized business coaching. For me, there's a very few people, and I would say you're on that list of people I think who move really well between business models. Most people don't have the strength or the depth of knowledge to do that. And it's scary. And this is why when I see group programs that are for B2C businesses, B2B businesses, coaches, photographers, like I'm like, what's happening? There's too many things here. Specificity is incredibly important.
So how do we become, okay, there's two questions I have for you.
Yeah.
You can decide to answer them in whatever order you want.
Okay.
How do we become better leaders in this
Yeah.
space and distinguish ourselves as the leaders in this space? And by leaders, I mean, not leaders in terms of making all the money, which I'm not going to lie, I'd be fine with, but leaders in terms of showing people a different way and being able to get them through that threshold where they're stuck, where they're going, but, even though this sounds goofy over here, there's a promise. And maybe in the faintest shade of hope that that promise can be real, maybe I want to go there instead. So it's kind of a two-pronged question. How do we ensure that people are starting to educate themselves? And secondly, like, first of all, they have to want to. But then secondly, how do we as business leaders become better leaders and show that you can be successful and still like pay attention to all of these things that our audience actually needs?
So I think what's interesting when you think about the how do we be better leaders question in the context of, helping our customers, letting know there is, first, what you said is people need to be ready, but they also need to have awareness. And most of the best leaders I know that are doing the most groundbreaking work, they're quiet. They're not visible. People don't know about them. Because I'll say, oh, do you know about to one of my clients who I would think naturally would, and they'd be like, no. So I think this is where leaders like you, leaders like me, and our group of people, we need to commit to how are we going to bring forth our solutions? Because what we see a lot of in the industry right now is there's a lot of complaining. There's a lot of unhappy people. There's a lot of what I would deem non-productive critique. It's just like everything's broken. The world is on fire. Wah, wah, wah. And I'm like, okay, look, can we move past this? And I think for those of us that are really leaders and really doing work in a way that's the antithesis of what's out there, we need to commit to bringing that analysis, bringing real solutions to the table, because anyone can complain, but can someone show up with an answer? Can they actually guide you through this? And I think if you're experienced, yes, you can.
Yeah, I tend to be more of an optimist, and although some of this stuff really irks me, I would rather focus on making sure that I can do better, and
Yes.
being able to bring that dialogue somewhere public, and
Yes.
help people be more aware. But there's only so much you can tell people. They have to sort of live that experience and get to the point where they're so frustrated, and the only problem is that those experiences are causing it to be more difficult to be a person in this space right now. And to call yourself a business coach, it's almost a dirty word, right? And especially like when you focus on online businesses, online business coach, man, that's like weight loss, right? Like it's at this point in time, we have a really bad rap, and it's understandable why we do. But where are people listening? Like, where are the right people listening?
For me, Instagram has been fascinating
Mm.
because if you talked to me a year ago, I've been like, I have no use for Instagram. And then I finally kind of figured out, I was like, oh, these conversations are needed on Instagram because of the parallel universe reality that goes on over there. It's like, hi, I'm over here being the antidote. And I think what you said about being optimistic, I mean, let's not get it twisted. I would not be here trying to gather up people once they've been burned and providing that space for them. And I would not be having these conversations if I wasn't ultimately optimistic. Like, I believe there's a lot of good things in this business model. I think there's a lot of amazing people working in this industry that I want to see succeed. And I just want us to like kind of go splinter cell and create our own economy.
I'm in for it. I'm here for it. Let's do it. But I think what I loved, I mean, there's so many things I love about you, but there's one of the things that I've loved about the commentary that you've been posting is that it's not all like burn it down, doom and gloom, right? It's like, it's some thoughtful dialogue and bringing, and you had the courage to bring to the forefront some of the stuff that we're seeing happening out there. And I mean, I know every now and then you and I share these WTFs, like what is going on over here? But I really don't want to be part of the complaint culture, right? I don't want to be part of the fire and brimstone. I'm always really skeptical of anything that is too polarizing. But I really want to be part of the solution. I really want to help people become educated. I really want to like show people that there's a quiet, confident way to build a business that is part of your, like, it doesn't have to be exciting, because that's what people want nowadays. They want to work for themselves. They want, like, I believe that entrepreneurship is going to save the world in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
But we can't all have exciting businesses that are like something we need to market. Like, this is just about providing for yourself in a way that feels a lot better than a job.
Yeah. And I think here's the thing that's actually, I really wish more people knew this, and I'm sure you will agree, is going back to those quiet, most successful business owners, they're making incredible living. They're, not working 24/7. It's not flashy, it's not fancy, but these are the kind of lives that people start businesses for.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't start a business to lie in a Lamborghini. I started it so like I could replace my salary and make my car payment.
I mean, let's be honest. I would be loving a Tesla right now, but that's for different reasons. That's because I like their environmental impact and all sorts of things. But
Yeah.
so I'll get behind the car, but it really, I mean, that was it for me, was being able to choose, right? to have choice
Yeah.
and freedom. And freedom does not mean that I go on trips all the time. Freedom means I can pick my kids up at 3 o'clock and not worry that somebody's watching down my back. Right. And that's what most people are after these days. So there's almost like this desexifying of being an entrepreneur that needs to happen. And I'm all here for it. God knows I can represent no sexy.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of refer this to my clients. I'm like, fuck fancy. We're not going to be fancy. Because if you want fancy, like, I am not the person you should be working with. Like, I'm going to host our retreat in a hotel that's easy to get to from the airport. Okay. And it's going to have a super nice pool and we're going to eat a good meal. But like, there's going to be no photographer with a photo shoot with a, like, I'm not going to charge you $10,000 to come and just make it fancy for the sake of it, being important. And you know what? Don't get me wrong. I love fancy. My best friend calls me 5-star. She's like, you love a good 5-star hotel, Maggie, but I don't bring that energy to my business.
Yeah. And like, I totally get that. I've been in the 5-star fancy mastermind and it seemed like a lot of fluff. And if there's anything,
well, you're paying for it.
I know. But can we just like make that a hashtag and make a campaign around fuck fancy? Because I am here for it.
I'm 100% here for fuck fancy. I had a client who sent me not that long ago, it was a picture of like a 70s kitchen. And she was like, can we normalize this kind of kitchen? And it was a meme that was going around. I shared it on Instagram. I got so many comments. People were like, this is my kitchen.
Yeah, I remember you shared your Hyundai or something.
Oh, yeah,
you're like,
I have a Hyundai Elantra.
Yeah.
I have a Jeep, but you know what? Like my Jeep's getting older. Like, and I'm just like, I don't drive that much. I can walk pretty much everywhere I need to go.
Yeah,
like,
I live in a small town. It's all good.
Like, why do I need a fancy car? Like, and you know what? If you're a car person, great. But I look at it as pick your fancy. Because I mean, I will say when I started making more money, I started buying handbags and purses. And like, I haven't used a purse in forever now. What's the point of these purses?
But that's the thing is like, again, this comes back down to like alignment, right?
Yes.
For me, it's a house. I want to live in a nice, like I don't live in a big house, but it's brand new. I feel good here. My home, I'm a Cancer. My home needs to be what I love, and I'll spend the money on that. But I couldn't give a shit about handbags or anything like that. But I think it like, again, it comes back to alignment. Like what makes you happy, and all these other signaling things that indicate you're a successful. Like I make good money, but I don't look like I do. But it's okay, right?
Exactly. I'm still wearing my Reitman's yoga pants because I like the fit. And they're $35 on sale and they're great and they last forever and they're made out of recycled water bottles. Like, what else could I want for? Why do I need $100 pair when the $35 pair makes me happy?
But if you want the $100 pair, go for it. Like, this is the thing is like we got to get out of like all the signaling and come back to what's important to you and what matters to you. And maybe it is nice yoga pants and maybe it is a nice handbag, and so what, right? But I'm on a mission to educate people that not all they see is true.
Oh,
and
have we not seen that the last year?
I know.
Like, have we learned nothing? Like, no one is what they, well, I wouldn't say no one, but like these celebrity entrepreneurs, they are not what they seem. And watching things, every time there's kind of a flare up, there's all this shock and surprise. And I was like, told you that in 2016. And not to be negative, but like, if we pay attention, this is why I want us to be more critical thinkers, I want us to slow down, because if we pay attention, the signs are always there.
So my theory is that there was this big group of these kind of celebrity entrepreneurs that got started when it was early days, and they built their lists really early on when there wasn't a lot of distraction. And now they have a huge following and they've kind of been established. But there are some people coming up who are incredible, but probably will never enjoy that growth unless they are attached to somebody who has a big audience, because it's just so much more saturated now. And I think that dream of becoming those celebrity entrepreneurs is almost impossible now because there are so many distractions and there's so much saturation in the market. So people are judging themselves because they can't get that kind of growth. But really, what those people enjoy, if they came into power now, I don't know that they would have such an easy time building because there are so many other competitors now.
And you know what, Steph? In the tech industry, you've seen it. It's called first mover advantage. It's a real thing. And I don't think it is ever acknowledged or talked about. That same person with the same skills doing it 10 years later would be a very different story. And we cannot compare to someone who started 10 years ago.
Yeah, but there's also like in that same vein, Microsoft has built an incredible business being a fast follower, right?
Yes.
And so it's timing. It's all timing.
And I think timing is everything, right? Like
Yeah.
we underestimate that. Like my experience building a business in this space starting in 2013 is going to be very different than someone who starts in 2023. And I think, maybe some people are fast followers, some people are first movers. Where you are in the adoption curve matters to some degree. So
I think what matters is how much you value that celebrity. Like that, how much does that matter to you anymore? Because we're now in this like maturation phase of online business where these are becoming jobs for us, right? This is our job now. It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be all of that, the glitz and glamour, in order to provide for us and just reach our goals that we set for ourselves, right?
And ultimately, I think there's something to be said for, I want people to know, and I know you are the same. I want people to know that you don't have to do that. There is no requirement for you to become a celebrity entrepreneur. There's no requirement for you to be fancy. There is no requirement for you to have to follow a certain advice. Like you can do this your way. And if you are super low key and don't want any fame, you're like an Enneagram 2 and there's just like, I just want to love my clients. There's lots of room for that.
And you can be very successful.
You can be incredibly successful. The most successful people I know in this space are quiet. They're not brand names. They're loving on their clients. And they are incredible. This is the most important part. They're incredible practitioners. They're not incredible marketers, not incredible at selling necessary, but they are amazing at their craft. And I feel like we need to value the craft more than we value the marketing.
Well, I have said this before and I'll say it again. One of the best marketing tools you can have is to be really fucking good at what you do.
Yes.
That's all I do. I don't market my one-on-one services. I never, ever do. I don't do a lot of marketing to begin with. And it's all just word of mouth and referral based because I just get good results, right? That's all you need to do. Okay. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I want to come back to you and your business. So what is going on with you right now? What are you focused on and kind of what's next for you?
That's a great question. So, I mean, on the Small Business Boss side, we are very much focused on just running our masterminds and serving our clients. And, we've just gone through intake. So now I'm like, it's full on delivery because that's why I do it. I don't do it so I can launch things. I do it so I can deliver to people. So we're very much focused on that for the next, 3 to 6 months, and always working on my content behind the scenes. I have a new limited series podcast coming out soon with my friend Michelle Mazer, talking about at like a more analysis academic level, some of the things in online business, like why does this happen and what do we do about it? Instead of just being like, hate this, burn it down.
Yeah.
And then with Scoop, it is forever just keeping our clients happy and refining our systems so I can be minimally involved.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. You've got a great story to tell. And I often send people to you because I want that dose of reality for them.
A loving slap and a hug all at once.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Awesome. Can you tell people, all of our listeners, where they can find you?
So the best place to find me is my podcast, the BS Free Service Business Show, because you're listening to a podcast right now. And I hang out on Instagram at Small Business Boss.
Awesome. And go and check Maggie's Instagram feed out because she's putting out some fiery content and it's amazing. And I think it's completely relatable. So I think we all need to be part of this Fuck Fancy campaign and
Yes.
just continue to be leaders in this space and lead with integrity and like the human side of business, because that's what it is. That's what it's all about, right? At the end of the day. Yeah. Okay. We are at time. So I want to thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today. Obviously, we could chat for another 2 hours. But that's a wrap for this episode. Such an amazing conversation. Make sure and go and check out Maggie and her incredible content. And thank you for tuning in to hear this story. And thank you for being here. If you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. And that helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. And until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.